Hello, fuzzy ducklings. This is Jan, bringing you our next Bountiful Bones project. Today, we are going to learn how to make this pirate skull picture. Now, first thing to do is to decide what you want to do with this. If you want to hang it on the wall when you're done, you may want to use one of these canvas boards. These are fairly inexpensive. You can get them at most stores, hobby stores, and even Walmart carries these. Or, if you're like me, I want to put mine in a page protector so I can put it in my scrapbook. So I'm sizing a piece of cardstock to fit my page protector. So you will have to decide how you want to use this picture so you'll know what size to cut your background pieces. So see, I cut this so it would fit perfectly into a page protector. And if you notice on my picture, this is the background, the black background. It just forms kind of a frame around my picture that I really like. And then I found a piece of decorative paper, scrapbooking paper. Actually, I have lots of scrapbooking paper because I love to scrap, that I thought set off my skull really neatly. So I found that piece, and you could do the same, or you can leave it all black, or if you're using a canvas board, paint it any color you want to paint it. So I took my black piece, I measured it so that when my orange piece is on top, it forms this little bit of a frame around it. Now, the next thing I did, which is going to sound a little silly, but I am going to take my Mod Podge. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with Mod Podge. What would we crafters do without Mod Podge? Now, if you're like me, I used to have so much trouble getting my cap on and off once I had opened this bottle and poured out of it, and I just about have to beat the death out of it to get the lid off. Just use a piece of plastic on the top before you close your lid, and you will have no more problems. Okay, I like to put my Mod Podge in a small bowl that I can just set right next to my workspace, and I don't have the worry that I'm going to spill the big bottle all over the place. At the worst, I'll just spill a little bit. Now, in the past for me, it has been so hard to Mod Podge a piece of paper, especially a large piece, onto something and not have wrinkles. And I have searched and searched and searched for a way to keep that from happening. And I think I've found it. And what you need to do is Mod Podge everything on the front surface first. Mod Podge it and let it dry. Even before you cut things out, even before you ink it or do other things to it, just give it a good coat of Mod Podge. And this always makes your paper so much more stable and strong to work with, and you won't get all the little drips and things like that. So I'm going to finish this, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I have this all covered with Mod Podge, and as soon as you get that covered, it's always a good idea to clean up your workspace. You don't want that drying on your desk or your work mat. Get that all cleaned up, and then while that dries, let's set it aside and work on some other parts of our picture. Now, probably before you started, and I didn't think to tell you then, we have templates for your pirate skull that you can download and use to draw around and make your own skull. Or if you did the project right before this on drawing your own sugar skull, you could draw your own. Wouldn't that be neat? But if you're in a hurry or would rather not draw today, just download this template. It should be somewhere right around where this video lives. So, download this, and then you cut out the pieces. Now, you may not need all of these pieces. Here's the skull. Here's some lips and teeth and a nose outline and nose holes. You'll probably want all those. If you want to cut your eyes out of some paper or material, here's a template for left eye and right eye. And if you like the scalloped look around the edges, there's the scallops. On the back sheet is a scarf that you see in a lot of pirate pictures. Here's a left eye and a right eye patch, depending which eye you want to patch, if you want to patch them at all. And here is a template for leg bones. You know, when you see the crossed bones behind the skull, and you'll need 4 of those. So decide what you want. Now, I decided to be a little different. Instead of using the eye templates, I decided it would be neat, and you probably saw it in my picture, to use a bottle cap. And then I glued a jewel in the middle of that bottle cap. And I don't know, I just thought that looked kind of neat. So you can use anything you have on hand for your eyes. You can use paper, material, cardboards. I'm sure you have lots of things in your craft supplies that you could use there. Just use your imagination. The next thing we need to do is decide what we want to make our bone pieces out of, and that would be the skull and the leg bones. Now, I have reverted back to liking to use my old yellow dictionary pages or an old book or old newspaper. You can use anything you want. You can just use regular paper or cardstock, or just look around your craft supplies and see what you have. And then we need to trace around these. And I'm fitting this on here so I can get my skull and 4 leg bones traced. So just get a marker, a pen or pencil. Now I like to use a marker that gives a fairly thick edge. It gives me a good line to cut around, and it shows up well in my picture. But you can use whatever you have on hand. So just trace around it, just like this. And be careful, I'm trying to trace fairly quickly here so that it doesn't take too long. My camera has decided it doesn't like to work very much, and I have to be quick before it stops on me. Oh, that's the way it goes when you're using technology and cameras and computers. Sometimes they get a little stubborn. So see, I have traced around that. Now, it won't hurt if I've accidentally strayed up and off of there, because we're going to cut it. And I really don't want to get lines on the inside, but usually you don't, because your piece of paper will stop it. And then I'm going to trace around here. I can get another one here. I can get one here and one here. So that's what I'm going to do next, is trace around my leg bones. All right, I have finished tracing my leg bones and my skull. So the next thing we want to do is the same thing we did with our piece of paper that was for the background. We want to put a layer of Mod Podge on here. Now, especially for me, because this old dictionary page is thin and fragile, but this helps with everything. I have been so glad to find this method that seems to, so far, really control the wrinkling that you get when you glue this onto your backgrounds. So just give a good layer of Mod Podge over this. This is before you cut it out or do anything else to it. Put a good layer of Mod Podge on there and let it dry. Now, it can be frustrating to have to stop your work and wait for things to dry. But believe me, in the long run, you'll be glad you did this step. And it really doesn't take too long. Now that I have this covered in Mod Podge, I'm going to lay this aside and let it continue to dry along with my orange piece. And we need to find out what we want to do with our hat, our teeth, our eye patches, and our nose. I found some checkered material. I've already cut this out to make my hat with. I don't know, I just like that red material on my pirate, but you could use any color you want. I found some black to make my eye patch with, and then some red for my lips. And then I found this, it's kind of a different piece of material, but it will be perfect for my teeth and the outline of my nose. So I'm going to trace all of these on these materials, and I'll be right back with you. Now I have traced all of my pattern pieces onto the paper I want them to be on. Now you will notice though, let's show you on the teeth here. There's lines here that I can't just trace around, and those you will need to draw on yourself, but I'm sure you can do that. I went ahead and drew lightly with my pencil, and now I'm going to take my marker and draw those lines in, just like that. There's my teeth. Now the nose. If you look at your pattern sheet, you'll see there's 2 nose holes you can cut out. And I did that on my pirate, and I glued them on. But they're such little pieces. If you're clumsy like me, I don't know. Once you get glue on your fingers and you get glue on those little pieces, they get really funny to handle. But it can be done. But I decided to try something different on this one. I'm just going to do that black nose hole with my marker. And you know what? This is so much easier than fiddling with those little pieces. So, that is an option if you wish to do that. Remember, these pattern pieces are just options and ideas. This is your art, so you can do anything you want with it. But that makes me happy right there without fiddling with those tiny little pieces, because eventually we put Mod Podge on them and they get all sticky. All right, so there's my nose and my teeth ready to cut out. I did cut out my eye patch already that's out of a black piece of paper. Now my hat, it had several lines in it. These wrinkle lines, I guess you'd call them, and these little stitch lines. And I did draw most of those in lightly with a pencil. So I'm sure there were, I want them to be before I put permanent marker on it. And again, with all of this, be sure that you have a pen that isn't going to smear when it gets wet with the Mod Podge. You don't want a smearing mess. So it's usually a good idea to use a pen you've used before with Mod Podge, or if it's a new pen, try it out on a little scrap piece before you actually do your project. Because it's heartbreaking when you have worked hard on a piece and then you may go to put on your last layer of Mod Podge and it smears and runs your whole art piece. That's enough to make anybody cry, even an old grandma like me. Now I'm going to add stitch marks here. When you can't remember, just refer back to your pattern. Now, I'm not going to draw all those little circles in. If you were actually painting this, you might want to draw them in. But since I already have checks on this, I don't feel like I need to add circles to my scarf. There we go. Got that all done. Now, I bet you can guess the next step. cut them out if it's not already cut out. I have these two cut out already. Cut these out and then Mod Podge them. Now you can Mod Podge first, and I think that's what I'll do with these two pieces. Is I will Mod Podge this and let it dry and cut it out. And then we will move on to our next step. It starts to get more fun here once we get done with all of our Mod Podging. Now I'm going to Mod Podge over my lips. Okay, it's time for me to let these dry. This has already been Mod Podged, and these all need to dry. Now what I should do is go ahead now and check on some of the other things I had podged. Here is my orange sheet. Oh, it's wonderful. You'll notice that Mod Podge kind of gives it a, I'd say, a feel almost like plastic. It's so much stronger than just paper. And it's going to be so much easier to glue without wrinkles. Let's see what my skull is doing. It's doing great too. So, while my hat and scarf and teeth are drying, we can work with these. I'd say the next step is we need to glue this onto our black background. And this is where you'll start to see the advantage of having Mod Podge this. So the easiest way to do this, you'll want to have something underneath here that you can clean up easily when you get Mod Podge all over it. Turn your sheet over and Mod Podge on the back of that. Don't worry about Mod Podging on your black sheet that you're fastening it to. Just Mod Podge the back of this sheet. Now I'm going to move this out of the way because I don't need to get it all over it either. Here we go. Everything kind of wants to go twisty-turvy on me. So we're going to cover the whole back of this sheet with Mod Podge. Alright, I have covered the back of my orange sheet of paper with Podge. Real quickly, I want to clean my mat up so that when I lay my black piece down, it won't stick to it. Now, I'm going to get my black piece of paper. Yeah, I keep sliding things out of camera view, don't I? And I'm going to carefully lay this sheet right in the center so that I have a little frame line. Now, from the center, press outward. Now, do you notice? No problem with wrinkles. And I've always had a terrible problem with wrinkles when I did this, no matter how hard I tried. And this just goes on so smooth. It's wonderful. It makes Mod Podge a dream to work with. And there we go. This is all ready now to put our skull on. Fantastic. All right, let's move on to the next step. So while your other pieces that you Mod Podged are drying, let's get our bone pieces out. And if you're like me, I like to kind of blend darker colors around the edge. And I do this with Distress ink. This is a vintage photo color. And my little dauber here. You could probably use a soft marker or colored pencil. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't tried to see what colored pencil does with Mod Podge first. Let's try it here. I have a handy dandy one. I'll try it right here, somewhere in the middle. Oh, it will. It will work with a little bit of work. Not as smooth and easy as if you didn't have Mod Podge on. So if you're using colored pencil, perhaps you might want to do that before you Mod Podge, because you can Mod Podge over colored pencils and it does no damage. It's possible to do it this way. You'll just have to work a little harder to lay down the color. Now, I like to use this ink, and it works just fine with Mod Podge down. So I am going to shadow the edges of my skull and my bones. It just kind of sets them off a little bit and looks really neat. This is optional. It's not something you would have to do. I just happen to like this on my pictures. So I'm going to do this all around my skull. Like that. And then it's time to cut these out. I like to do this before I've actually cut them out, but you could ink them afterwards too. Either way will work just fine. All right, I will be back as soon as I have finished this and I've cut these pieces out. Okay, I now have all of my Mod Podge pieces dry. I have my background, my teeth, my nose, my scarf, and my bones, all Mod Podged and dried. So the next step is to glue these onto our background. This is the fun part because it really starts to look cute. Now I'm going to move some of this over. Now, you will find that as this dries, it may curl. Don't panic. You can bend it back. And I would say probably put this under a heavy book or something. Now, to be honest, it could be that if you Mod Podge the opposite side of this, maybe it wouldn't do that. I haven't tried that yet. But it is very bendable. And to keep it from causing problems while I'm gluing down my skull, I'm going to take some painter's tape. And just at the corners, I'm going to tape it down just to keep it flat while I'm working on it. This will end up drying flat. This will end up drying flat if you put something over the top of it for a few hours. I would even say maybe overnight. And it'll dry flat. All right. Now, I need to position my skull and my bones and get them down next. It's a little tricky to get our bones in here the way we'll want them. Now, you need to figure out exactly where you want this skull to be. And then we're going to do the crossbones. Well, we are finished with our picture. After gluing on my mouth and nose and eyes and scarf, I gave the whole picture another coat of Mod Podge. I didn't cover the bottle cap or the gem just in case that might dull the shine there. Now I have a little bit of curl on my picture, so it needs to lay under something hard all night, but that won't be a problem. It will flatten right out. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and thank you for your patience with my audio problems. I am going to have to think about another camera, I think, but you know, we'll see how long we can keep this one working. But thank you for your patience, and I hope you'll be back for our next project, which will be another Bountiful Bones project. So bye-bye for now.